sobs of the violins of autumn wound my heart with a monotonous language.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Today at 1, we're live in Ukraine as Russia invades in a major military assault by land, sea and air.
It's now more than a month since the US Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, visited Taiwan. China's ambassador to Australia also issued a blunt warning a few days ago that those who push for Taiwanese independence will be punished.
We're waiting for a peaceful reunification, but we cannot rule out other options.
You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed, it'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore.
Welcome to Dictators v Democrats, Why We Fight, the show where we speak with those on the front lines of defending democracy. New episodes drop every Friday. If you value this work, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a review. It makes a huge difference. You can also support us on Patreon, Substack, or Buy Me a Coffee. Paid supporters get episodes a week early. Also, check out my work on the Dictators v Democrats Substack and YouTube channels, where I cover every front of the global fight for democracy, and join our Discord community. Now, let's find out why they fight.
Welcome to Why We Fight. I am very pleased to be here today with Mr. Ray Wong, the Policy and Strategy Advisor from Hong Kong Watch, amongst many other things. Been involved in the Hong Kong democratic movement for coming up to nearly 10 years plus now.
Yes.
For my audience, what is it that you do at the moment?
So at the moment, I am working part-time for London-based organization called Hong Kong Watch. So I mainly focus on advocacy campaigns in the US. So concretely, what we do is to advocate for bills that could protect the rights and freedoms of the people of Hong Kong. And additionally, we also focus quite a lot on curtailing China's influence in overseas country.
You started this journey some time ago in Hong Kong itself, involved in grassroots activism, street protests. Why did you start getting involved and at significant personal risk?
Yeah. At the very beginning, I didn't really plan to get so deeply involved in activism. So maybe a little bit of my background. I got involved in politics in 2014 during the Umbrella Revolutions. Before that, I just participated in various protests or political events organized by other organizations. And then during the Umbrella Revolutions, I got more involved, I got more active, and then I realized, Hong Kong is really at a point where if we don't fight for the freedom and democracy there, we will completely lose it. And I want to get more involved to see what I could do. And also my friends and other comrades, we all share the same idea. We want to, try our best to safeguard our lifestyle and our identity. And at the very beginning, we really didn't think too much. What we saw is the Chinese Communist Party, the authority in Beijing, has been trying to erode our freedom and rights, has been trying to eradicate our identity, and we are very worried. One of the reasons is exactly because Hong Kong is very close to mainland China. We have a lot of interactions with people from mainland. And even my parents, they were born in mainland China. They were educated there. And a lot of my family, a lot of my family members, relatives, they are still in mainland China. So in my personal experience, when I have interactions, when I have conversation with them, I could see that there is a war in their mind. Especially when it comes to politics, when it comes to some existential questions. What are our values? Why are we here? I can see there is a war inside them. And I'm really, really worried that Hong Kong or the people of Hong Kong would just become like people from mainland China. That's the reason why I stood up. I got really involved in activism to protect our own culture, our way of living, our values.
And you've mentioned identity culture 3 or 4 times now. What is it that differentiates Hong Konger culture from mainland culture?
Well, Hong Kong is a very unique place. It has its historical trajectory. It's very different from mainland China. Hong Kong has become a British colony since 1842. Since then, Hong Kong has always been a place where the East and the West meet. So when you look at our culture, you can see we still retain the good side of the traditional Chinese culture, but at the same time, we also have the Western enlightened elements, for example, fundamental freedoms, human dignities, rule of law, democracy, all are integral part of our society. And after we live in a free society, and when we just cross the border, it's really easy for us when we cross the border from to Shenzhen to the big mega city in China. We could feel the change of atmosphere. We could feel the change of people's mindset. And I think this drastic difference between Hong Kong and mainland China prompts a lot of us to want to preserve our values and our own way of living. I mean, after all, what is politics about? One of the key thing of politics is to organize the society in the way that everyone has the say, has a human dignity to live in the way that they choose and they want.
You mentioned how you began to get involved, how you saw this change beginning to take place and this threat rising. Was there any particular moment where you thought, okay, the fulcrum has shifted, I have to now be active?
I think the turning point for me is the first day of the Umbrella Revolution. It was the 28th of September 2014. So that day, it was the first time like people gathering on the streets and to start the occupied central movement. And that day, police fired tear gas towards people. And I still remember, like no one expected the police would fire tear gas that quickly, and everyone was very peaceful. We were just sitting on the street. And I remember in the chaos, everyone was running. I saw a middle-aged guy standing in front of the police. At that time, the police was holding a gun. We didn't know what kind of gun it is. It could be like wheeled arms, but it turns out we later find out that's rubber bullets gun. But at that time, no one knows. I saw a guy standing in front of the police and shouting at the police saying, "Don't fire. If you fire, just fire at me." And that scene was really shocking to me because before that I didn't I didn't think about someone who would be willing to sacrifice his or her life for this place, the place that we call our home. And that was the first time I saw someone who has this determination. And this prompted me to ask myself whether I'm also willing to sacrifice myself for this place. And when I just asked myself this question, the answer just popped up. Yes, I love this place. I love the people, the culture, the way of living, and I am willing to sacrifice for all this that I love.
How did you see those early actions, those early protests, and the response that the police had, firing tear gas? How did they shape the tactics of later protests?
So at first, the civil society at that time planned to do occupations outside of the government's building, and it was partly the movement, but there were other protesters who believed that like this tactic is not the most effective, because if we just stay there, the government could manipulate the public opinion into thinking, wow, those protesters are really disturbing the public order, and they also fabricate some story like an ambulance was trying to cross the road, but protester was blocking it, which is entirely wrong. It was false. It didn't really happen. But we saw that the public opinion was slowly shifting, because the organizer of the occupation movement didn't really have a strategy. What they planned to do was just to keep occupying. And then a group of protesters who think, including me, who believe that we should be a bit more proactive. We should try to do something more, either to expand our occupations area or really to target the key roles that heading towards the outside of the government's building, in order to block the operations, the functions of the government. And then some group of protesters did that, and I would say that was the beginning of the Be Water strategy, which later became very prominent in the anti-extradition law movement in 2019. A small group of protesters started this strategy back in 2014, but at that time, I think the majority of people, or even of the participants of the occupations movement, wasn't really ready for that. So this strategy didn't really gain much traction. And later, after the Umbrella Revolutions, so different part of civil society organize panel discussions to, reflect on the failure of the movement. Some groups, including mine, believe that one of the reasons of the failure is because we were too passive. We should take more proactive actions. So later on, after I founded an activist group called Hong Kong Indigenous, we advocate for this kind of approach, to be proactive, to be even a bit more confrontative with the police.
Talking about slogans and the power of words and stories, the phrase "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our times" became a huge rallying cry in 2019. What did it mean to you originally?
So originally, this slogan was an election slogan of our election campaigns in 2016. So at that time, our main goal of the campaign is to spread our ideology and our understanding of the situation in Hong Kong. So before the Umbrella Revolutions, the dominant camp in the pro-democracy movement is what we call the Pan-Democrats. Their strategy or their whole understanding of the situation is the following. They still believe in one country, two systems. They strive to fight for democracy within this one country, two system framework. But after the Umbrella Revolutions, it's more, especially young people, believe that under one country, two systems, there is no way we could we could obtain genuine democracy, because we know the nature of the Chinese Communist Party. They are authoritarian, and they will never allow a city like Hong Kong and people of Hong Kong to enjoy genuine rights and freedom. So the next logical question is, if one country, two system doesn't work, what is our end game? What should we ask for? What should we fight for? And our answer is Hong Kong independence. Or some more mild version would be self-determination. And at that time in our election campaign, we just wanted to spread our understanding of the situations. We want to tell people that now Hong Kong is dominated, is occupied by this new colonizer. One colonizer, the British colonizers, left, and then the new colonizers came, namely the Chinese Communist Party. So we should liberate Hong Kong. We should take back our control. And this is the fight of our generation, of our time. So that was the initial idea of our election campaign. And we came up with this slogan to sort of encapsulate the essence or our objective of the election campaign. And after the by-elections, it was in February 2016, we didn't win the elections because it was just a by-election, and we didn't plan to win the election. We just wanted to, gain popularity through participating in the elections. And then our actual aim is the upcoming general elections in the Legislative Council in September that year. But then the government disqualified our candidates. We support other parties. We won 2 seats, and then the government disqualified our legislators. And after that, actually, we didn't use the slogan anymore, Liberate Hong Kong, Revolutions of Time. Even some of our members already forgot this slogan. It was really until 2019, 1.5 months after the outbreak of the movement. I still remember the date. It was on the 21st of July, 2019. People started shouting this slogan again. And if you ask me why protesters at that time take out this slogan and shouted this slogan again, I think it was a moment of realizations that what we were warning, what we were, our understanding of the situations back in 2016 were actually correct. CCP is not going to give us democracy. One country, two systems will not work. And what CCP has been doing is to slowly erode the foundations of our free and quasi-democratic society. It was that realization that prompted people to realize, well, actually back then they were right. And now this is really our task, to really take back our autonomy, our power, to liberate Hong Kong. And this is really the historical missions, the revolutions of our time.
And I know you can't get into the heads of CCP apparatchiks, but why do you think this has been their policy? I see this in Taiwan. I see this as well in Ukraine, a country that has cultural ties to another, becoming a more successful democracy, opening up, and an authoritarian state coming in and trying to clamp down upon it.
Well, I think what is the foremost priority of all the policy from the Chinese Communist Party is regime security. This is foremost important for them. And I think a lot of observers in the West don't really understand how the CCP operates. They thought they are rational actors. If we, give them enough economic incentive, we could shape their behavior. No. What they really care about is same as Putin, same as other autocrats, is their own regime security. And then the next question is, what kind of security threats a free Hong Kong, a democratic Hong Kong poses to the mainland China, poses to the Chinese Communist Party? And that's simple. Because of the proximity of Hong Kong and other mainland and mainland cities and mainland, people in mainland could see that, well, people in Hong Kong, they have the freedom to criticize their government. They have freedom to fight for their own rights. And they have the rule of law, which makes them prosperous. People in mainland would start asking for the same thing, would start demanding the same thing. And I think that's also the same reason why CCP sees Taiwan as such a threat, because CCP has been making the argument that, well, the democracy and this kind of freedom are Western product. It doesn't really apply to Chinese nations, Chinese culture. We have our unique historical developmental path. This is their wording. But every time when they make such arguments, we could just ask people to just look at Taiwan. Taiwan, of course, is not entirely a Chinese nation, but predominantly the culture is very close to Chinese culture. A lot of people there are Chinese descendants. And democracy works perfectly well in Taiwan. So CCP sees democracy, sees free society in any Chinese communities as a threat to their own regime security. So even before the handover, in 1997, CCP has already been planning to undermine the freedom and rights in Hong Kong, and they have been very successful. They deployed underground party members. They united front different all the sectors in our society, our media, our business sectors, in public administrations, basically all sectors in the key sectors in the society have been infiltrated by CCP, and their ultimate aim is to assimilate Hong Kong, is to transform Hong Kong to just another Chinese city. Of course, they have a different strategic objective for Hong Kong. They want Hong Kong. They want Hong Kong, but they don't want the people of Hong Kong. They want the financial infrastructure through which they have access to the global market. But they don't want the people of Hong Kong who want freedom, who want rule of law. They want their own people so they could manipulate, they could exploit this financial system, this trade hubs, this strategic locations for their own geopolitical ambitions.
It reminds me of, I believe, something a later East German leader said. So, well, what socialism in our country needs is a new proletariat.
Yes, exactly.
You mentioned United Front and United Front work. I doubt many people will be very familiar with it here in the West. I've looked at it to a certain extent myself. Briefly, could you run through what that is and how it's influenced?
Sure. So CCP United Front work is a very systematic approach to first neutralize potential critics or potential opponents. So in the case of Hong Kong, is the pro-democracy politicians. They constantly try to approach pro-democracy politicians, try to co-opt them, and try to silence them. And they were relatively successful, I would say. Some previously pro-democracy politicians later turned to they claim to be neutral, or they claim that they are the rational pro-democracy politician, which is completely BS. And the second objective of United Front is to build a supporter network. So there could be some neutral or already supportive sympathizers, and they organize this group of people systematically, and then mobilize them to do things that the state apparatus is not in the position to do that. One example would be they would be to co-opt the overseas Chinese leader and to mobilize them. And at some point when it's needed, all this overseas Chinese leader would come out to, for example, to criticize their host country government, or to advocate for policies favorable for the Chinese government. So that's in very broad terms, the objectives of CCP's United Front work. And how important it is. So we could just look at their official rhetoric. Xi Jinping has said that United Front is one of the magic weapons of the party. And when we look at the history during the civil war between the Communist Party and the Nationalist Party, Mao Zedong has also emphasized the importance of United Front work, and they managed to neutralize a lot of hostility within the Nationalist Party and co-opted a lot of people to support their cause.
Thank you. I want to go back to your story. You were charged in absentia with rioting and gained asylum in Germany. How did it feel having to leave?
Well, I would say the decisions to leave Hong Kong is the most difficult decisions I've ever made in my life. So initially, after I was arrested, I didn't really plan to leave Hong Kong, even though I know the punishments would be very severe. But at that time, I didn't really think about that. And the plan at that time was my other colleague would learn to leave Hong Kong while I stay in prison. And only a few months before the beginning of the trial, it was September 2017. I was told that my colleague would like to stay in Hong Kong. He doesn't want to leave Hong Kong. And it prompted me to think whether I should be the one to leave Hong Kong and to tell a story. It was really a strategic calculations, because so we have two leaders in our group. One is Edward Learn and another one is me. And we think if we both go to prisons, that may not be the most strategically smart outcome. A better outcome would be one, go to prisons, another one, live and to tell our story to the international community. Because back in 2017, 2018, most of the countries, most of the politicians in the West still believe one country, two systems function very well. The authority in Beijing really upholds their promise to the people of Hong Kong. And we need people to wake them up, to inform them of the actual situations on the ground. So I started thinking whether I should leave. And I remembered around 10 days, 2 weeks, I was thinking about this questions very intensively, and to the point I couldn't really eat. I couldn't really sleep well. And I set a deadline to myself that, okay, before October, I have to make the decisions. And at some point, at the very last moment, I sort of had a revelation, and I realized, okay, that's probably right for me to leave Hong Kong. And then I prepared to seek asylum in Germany, and eventually I came to Germany. I sought asylum, stay in refugee camps for around a year. Then I got my asylum approval.
And many dissidents face burnout or a feeling of invisibility once they're abroad. How have you managed to stay effective?
It's really difficult. It's especially when I'm so far away from my home city, and it's also very dangerous for people there to remain direct contact with me. It's really difficult to continue the work. How I try to remain effective, I think taking care of my own mental health is very, very crucial. In the past, I had the mindset that not explicitly, but implicitly, I had the mindset that it's just a matter of few years. So I want to sprint through the whole thing. Whenever, whatever I have an opportunity, I would go for it. Wherever I have an idea, I would just do that, regardless of my own well-being, of my own mental health. And I experienced burnout very quickly. And I think after the movement in 2019, I realized I shouldn't see it as a sprint. It's a long-term battle, and in order to go further, to be able to go further more efficiently, I also should take care of my own well-being and mental health. I would say now I'm still looking for the balance, but eventually it's getting better and better.
What's been the hardest adjustment?
Well, everything is very hard. It's really difficult to just single out the hardest ones. I mean, even if I'm not a refugee, even if I'm just an ordinary immigrant to Germany, Germany is hard enough. The bureaucracy, the culture, the people, the language. And plus, I cannot go back to Hong Kong. I cannot, just go back and recharge. I have some friends who live in Germany for a long while. They can every year go back to Hong Kong for a month to recharge, to take care of their own well-being, and then they come back to the cruel Germany. The toughest part, I think, is the distance to my friends and my family in Hong Kong. And I've been asked a lot, how does it like to be in exile? I always say it's like part of me is dead when I leave Hong Kong. That part of me can only manifest when I'm with my friends, when I'm with my family in Hong Kong. There are only things, there are only like jokes, there are only stuff to talk about when I'm still in Hong Kong, when we are there. And that part of me is dead forever until I could go back to Hong Kong. And it really creates a big void inside me. And in the first few years, I think most of my time, I was just confronting this void, try to either distract myself, which later I found out that's not the right way. Then I need to rebuild myself. But even though I have been in exile for over 7.5 years already, I would say it's impossible to rebuild something to completely replace that void. That void remains inside me. And now I think what I'm still learning is to live peacefully with the void, to accept that this part of void, this void is forever part of me.
And perhaps a bit more of a light-hearted question. Have you found anything pleasantly surprising?
Well, I won't say that's pleasantly surprising, but I would say it's a positive side of being in exile. I still remember during the anti-extradition law movement in 2019. At the time, I was already in Germany. So exactly because of this distance, I see the movement from a more distant perspective. And so when I talk with my friends who are also activists in Hong Kong, actively involved in the movement, I could sort of provide a more more distant, more cold-hearted analysis of the situations, and I think it's helpful. We do need that, especially when they were in that environment every day, surrounded by people who share the same sentiment. It's sometimes good to have someone who are a bit distant, but at the same time know very well about the movement to provide a different perspective.
And living in exile, something that has come up in many of my interviews is the spectre of transnational repression. What's been your experience?
Well, I think compared to my colleagues in the UK, like Commonwealth and Finland and Nathan Law, and also in the US, I think my situation in Germany is slightly better than them. I haven't really encountered any physical violence from any agents or pro-China supporters. But I did have an experience of being followed by suspicious Chinese people. So it was back in 2019, in the height of the movement. I was with a group of students from Hong Kong to meet with politicians in Berlin. After a meeting with the politicians, we went to a restaurant to have lunch. On the way to that restaurant, we noticed that a Chinese couple, or at least a Chinese-looking couple, was following us. And at the time, we didn't really think too much because that area is a touristic area. It's normal to have, tourists around. But that couple followed us to a restaurant, and they sat exactly next to us. And at that time, we already thought that's a bit weird. And throughout the whole lunch day, they didn't talk to each other at all. They were just eavesdropping what we were talking about, and that's very obvious. And then at the end of our meal, when we left the restaurant, they took out their phone and take pictures of us. So that's very obvious that they were sent from the Chinese side to. I think it's not so much to really monitor us, but to send us a message that the big brother is watching you. So that was one of the experiences. And beyond that, I know the Chinese side has been trying to gather my information via Chinese students. But unsuccessfully, and my Google account sometimes will be hacked by suspicious state-sponsored hacker. Google will send me a notification saying they suspect it's a state-sponsored hacker trying to steal my password. And that's mostly my experience, but I know in Germany, other Chinese dissidents and also Uyghur Tibetan dissidents, they face more transnational repression, especially there are officially 2 Chinese overseas police stations here in Germany. Their situation is more worrying. But I'm also grateful that the German government is taking the issues more and more seriously. They address this issue in their coalition agreement, and the Foreign Office lately has established new positions to coordinate different government departments to address the issue of transnational repression. So I think that's positive developments here in Germany.
And staying on the transnational theme, where do you see the levers of the CCP's influence in effect in the established democracies? I'm thinking specifically Confucius societies at universities, and in the UK, the enormous controversies over Beijing's super embassy that they're trying to build.
Yeah. Well, I think CCP's tactics, infiltration strategy is really very encompassing, ranging from academics to media to diaspora to business. We all see their operations, like in academias. You have already mentioned the Confucius Institutes. In Germany, we also find the same problems with Confucius Institute and other institution that less people are aware of is the China Scholarship Council. So basically, it's the governmental body that funds students to study abroad, and this institution requires their students who receive their stipendium to report to the embassy or to the CSC regularly. And sometimes one of my relatives received a stipendium, and she told me that when she had an interview with her sort of supervisor, the supervisor would ask her questions like, "Oh, have you noticed any weird behaviors from other Chinese students?" Meaning, well, if a Chinese student is hanging out only with white or non-Chinese students, that's a weird behavior. Or if someone is critical. And so the Chinese government effectively turned its exchange students to becomes a means to monitor, to surveillance other Chinese students. And then in the diaspora, we have seen a lot of Chinese associations. They have very close ties with the United Front Work Department. and a lot of them, they also have close ties with some local governments, and they act as a bridge to facilitate the exchange between subnational authorities, like, for example, Berlin and Beijing, or Hamburg and Shanghai. And in Germany, I think this kind of subnational diplomatic relationships are the key entry point for the Chinese Communist Party to build a foothold, to build their influence here. So last year, my organization published a report exactly on the subnational diplomacy between Germany and China. And then we find out, like, actually everything is almost publicly said and written from the Chinese side. They said the sister city partnerships is an important vehicle for them to advance their foreign policy objectives, and in their official document, or in their previous official document, they also mentioned a strategy like using the local to surround the center, and they are doing it very successfully when we look at Germany. Like the previous chancellor, Olaf Scholz, before becoming the chancellor of the at the federal level, he was the mayor in Hamburg. And Hamburg has a sister city partnership with Shanghai, and Shanghai is the headquarters, is the place of the for Costco. So at that time, when he was the mayor, he already built deep ties with Shanghai, with Costco. When he became the federal chancellor, he insisted a deal to sell the Hamburg port to Costco, despite the objections from the EU Commission, from his own cabinet members, even from the head of the German intelligence, the BND. And I think it shows very clearly that China started building its influence at the local level, at the municipal level, and then later, when the local politicians become national politicians, they could insert their influence at that time. And I think this issue has not been really widely discussed and well addressed by most of the Western countries, and so that would be the topic that is a topic that my organization has been working on, and I think it's very important for Westerners to understand the strategy of the Chinese Communist Party.
And focusing back on Hong Kong, what's the next phase of resistance?
I think after the imposition of the national security law, the resistance movement has shifted towards overseas. So we see a lot of new advocacy organizations being established, like in the US, Canada, in EU, in UK. And I think this is very important because we know as long as we continue the movement, we continuously developed our identity, maintain our identity, eventually we will see the next opportunity to organize any kind of movement, and who knows which one would be the successful one. But as long as we keep going on, we didn't give up, I'm sure we will see that day. And my experience in Germany, it really inspires me a lot. I remember talking to some old East Germans. They told me before the fall of the Berlin Wall, they didn't believe it could really happen. They didn't believe Germany would be united. They didn't believe USSR could really collapse. But then it happened, and it's taught me a lesson. In history, authoritarian regimes can collapse very suddenly without any warnings. And now, when I look at the situation in Hong Kong, in China, yes, it seems pretty gloomy. It's really hard to be optimistic when we look at the situation on the ground. But, well, in history, it happens many times already. And I'm sure it will also happen to the CCP. So what we should do is basically to play the long game, to keep developing ourselves, our diaspora. Eventually, we will win.
And I want to ask about some values. But first, younger people in the established democracies seem to be losing faith with the idea of democracy itself. And they're hit by a lot of propaganda, especially on social media, that shows glittering cities on the mainland at night, looking very cyberpunk. And I always have to say, well, cyberpunk is dystopian. But what do you have to say to those young people who are beginning to believe that democracy isn't working?
Well, I would say as a Hong Konger, we have, I think, the prototypical cyberpunk city. And if you just care about the material side of life, Hong Kong is probably top on the list in the world. But yet, when you look at Hong Kong people, especially young people, we could easily have a very luxurious, comfortable life. But we still choose to fight for freedoms and democracies. Why? Without freedom and democracy, even though you live in a luxurious, comfortable life, you are not so different from being just an animal, a pig. It's just like you are a pig living in a luxurious slaughterhouse. Yes, you enjoy the best food, you enjoy a luxurious place to live, but you don't have the autonomy, you don't have the freedom to choose what you want to become. And I think for me personally, what makes us human is our ability to choose who we want to become. And this is what humanity means to me. Without democracy, without freedoms, we cannot choose. We cannot really live for ourselves. And I think anyone who is thinking whether, wow, maybe maybe it's just have a glittering life in China without freedom is good enough. Ask yourself, is it what it means to be a human being? Is it what kind of human being you want to become?
And when you say those words, democracy, freedom, human life, so human rights, not human life.
Yeah.
What images in your mind do they conjure?
This is a very difficult question. I'm trying to formulate in a way that I don't need to use too many philosophical terms.
I was about to bring up Edith Stein and Liebe and Körper.
Sorry?
Saint Edith, what you said earlier, it reminded me of Saint Edith Stein, born Jewish saint who was converted to Catholicism, was killed during the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And the difference between the human being as the Leib, the one that lives, grows, loves, learns, and the Körper, the object.
Yeah. I'm a philosophy student. So I know she was a student of probably Heidegger or Husserl, and that branch of philosophy impacted me a lot to shape my understanding of all these values. That's why I'm trying really hard to think how to formulate it in a way that I don't need to use too many technical terms. What image come to my mind? I think it's more about the image that came to my mind when we don't have freedom, democracy, and human rights. And we could easily see that. Just look at the people in North Korea, in China, and in Russia. They are brainwashed, they are indoctrinated. They believe they have a free life, but when you really ask them to give you reasons why they believe in the thing they believe, why they act in the way they act, they cannot really answer you. Oh, it's just, yeah, that's the right thing. That's the hidden message is that's the government tells you what I should think, what I should behave. And I think deep down, everyone, when we look at that, it's very deep in our soul, our being, that we know that's not something we want to become. And I think that may answer your questions more properly instead of giving you a positive answer.
What advice do you have to people who are struggling for democracy or struggling against democratic backsliding in any part of the world?
Again, I'm thinking in the very broad terms. Try not to be, but it's really hard. Well, I will just go for it anyways. If we zoom out and look at the whole historical development of our civilization, it's always you can see a rhythm. We try to fight for more rights, fight for more freedoms for every individuals, and then we face the resistance from the system. And then, yes, we may go 3 steps forward and then 2 steps backward, but we always make 1 step progress after all. And especially when we look at the progress we have made in the last few centuries, is tremendous. It's tremendous. If we compare the progress we have made to, let's say, medieval time, we didn't make much progress in few hundred years, but in the last few centuries, we made a lot of progress. Today, the numbers of people who died because of war, because of suppressions, way less if you compare to any particular point in history. And all this progress are thanks to the gradual decentralization of power through the form of democracy. So if we take such a broad perspective, yes, now we are facing challenges in democracy. But don't forget, there is one very beautiful and sophisticated mechanism that only exists in democracy, which is the self-correcting mechanism. As long as we give space, we give the power to people, I believe in our collective wisdom. We are creative enough to come up with new solutions to new challenges. So yeah, I would just say don't lose faith, and just when we face hardships, zoom out and look at the broad picture.
And where and how could people support your work and support the work of Free Hong Kong?
So there are numbers of Hong Kong organizations which are really doing fantastic work. The organization I'm working for, Hong Kong Watch, is one of them. And like in the US, we have also other organizations like CFHK, HKDC. In EU, we have the European Hong Kong Diaspora Alliance. In Asia, like for example, in Japan, we have the Lady Liberty team. All organizations are doing really important work for our cause. And I think if anyone who would like to support our cause to fight against the Chinese Communist Party fight for the freedom and rights of the people of Hong Kong, please consider to donate a little bit to support these organizations.
And my final question, it often gets quite a short and occasionally sharp response. Do you have a message to send to the dictators, the authoritarians of the world?
Read history. No dictators could last forever.
Ozymandias. Mr. Wong, thank you very much indeed for your time and a fascinating conversation.
That's it for this episode of Why We Fight. What struck you most about their story? What did you agree or disagree with? Drop a comment and let us know. And if this conversation meant something to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who cares about democracy as much as you do. To get early access and support independent journalism, join us on Patreon or Substack. Links are in the description. And if you want to connect with a global community of people who care about freedom and human rights, come hang out with us on Discord. Until next time, remember, democracy is non-negotiable.